FPL Game Week 11 transfer targets. In today's video, we're going to go through some of the top players you are considering buying into your FPL teams going into Game Week 11. We'll also have a bit of a discussion now about some players you might be considering selling. We'll have an update on players who might be flagged like Cole Palmer. We'll talk about Erling Haaland versus Mo Salah and maybe what's going on at Manchester City. And do we want any of their players at all with the way that they're playing? What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here. And all the data always taken from these transfer targets videos is taken from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. If you want to have a look at comparison between players, if you want to read articles from top managers, if you want to have a look at the fixture tick and look at data to decide yourself which are the best players to buy, check out the link in the description. They are still offering a discount. Now, let's dive in and talk about some players and should you sell them before we have a look at potentially some of the replacements for these players if you are going to sell them this week. Let's start off with Manchester City. We're actually going to start off in defense with Rico Lewis. 4.9 million he's up to now. He didn't start in game week 10, and the fixtures coming up are not looking that great. They also just conceded 4 goals last night in the Champions League to new Manchester United manager and Sporting Lisbon as well. It doesn't look great from them defensively, and without Rodri, they do look a little bit defensively fragile. Lewis as well doesn't feel completely nailed with Kyle Walker being back. I still think he is first choice. Think he should start. If they both hadn't started a game in a week, Rico Lewis is more likely to start than Kyle Walker, but it still offers a little bit of debate in my mind about which of them are more nailed and first choice at the moment. Looking at the upcoming fixtures as well, Brighton away, I don't expect a clean sheet. Spurs at home, I don't. Liverpool away, I don't either. Nottingham Forest in game week 14, maybe because it's at home, but still probably unlikely with the way that they are playing. Rico Lewis is not also offering enough going forward at the moment for me to really think that he's going to get a lot of attacking threats. So he's not a direct sell, but for me, he's probably replaceable now and something I'm looking to do in my team. Next up is Dominic Calvert-Lewin, one that is continuing to frustrate. The fixtures coming up still look good, but I think you can put that to bed. I still think Dominic Calvert-Lewin is now a sell. And we have this in FPL where you hold an asset just because the upcoming fixtures are good, but they're not performing. And I think Calvert-Lewin fits into that. People gave him one more week for Southampton and then it didn't work. One more week for West Ham, then one more week for Brentford at home. For me, Calvert-Lewin needs to go because there are some fantastic cheap forwards in the game that you can replace him with. Trent Alexander-Arnold, again, a blank in game week 10. Not really getting those attacking returns. If you've still got him, Aston Villa at home, Southampton away, you could potentially keep him for, but once game week 13 does come around, I do think there are better options at a cheaper price. We'll talk about some defenders at the moment, but I would move to potentially a Konate. If you still want Liverpool cover, you could even go to a Van Dijk. There is a potential route to Tsimikas in there as well. So for me, Trent is a fine hold, but he's definitely not a buy at the moment. And then the final one is Erling Haaland of Manchester City. Now, another blank in the Premier League, despite having good chances. A blank in the Champions League with a missed penalty does make you think that 15.4 million might be a little bit too much to spend. Now, as myself sold him last week, it's easier for me to sit here and say, yeah, well, the data's okay, but the performances are not there. They are getting returnees to the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, that's the one, Semenyo, Doku. A lot of these players are looking like they are closing in on return, which should make Manchester City and their attack better. The upcoming fixtures are okay. Mixed. You've got Brighton, Spurs, Liverpool and Forest in there. Erling Haaland is more likely to score a hat-trick every single week than any other player in the Premier League at the moment. So, of course, selling him is a major risk. It's what it does for the rest of your team. If selling him gets you a Mo Salah and a Cole Palmer, both of them, then yes, I still think it's a sale. Now, I'm not necessarily certain that game week 11 is the week to do it because I do think Brighton will play into Manchester City hands. So I'd probably keep him for game week 11, but I still think every week now we need to be considering if he's worth the money. To talk about one of the key teams, and that is Spurs. Ipswich at home this week, followed by Manchester City away. Then they go back into quite a nice run. They were some of the most sold players going into game week 10, and they are now some of the most bought in players, having just won 4-1 against Aston Villa. To briefly discuss defence, if you own Pedro Porro, I'd keep him for Ipswich at home, but after that I would be looking to sell. Defensively, they look all over the place. He doesn't look like he's offering enough going forward, so he's not a buy. I'd give him one more week before potentially selling him. Moving into midfield, the cheaper options, you've got Maddison, Kulusevski and Brennan Johnson. For me, Maddison and Kulusevski fall into a similar boat to Porro. If you own them, absolutely keep them and start them. Hope that Maddison starts if that's who you've got, but I'm not sure you'll be buying new. And from game week 12, I don't think they're consistent enough and explosive enough in that Spurs team to be warranting having a space in our midfield. However, Brennan Johnson feels a little bit different. He got back on the score sheet. Feels very consistent in terms of his returns at the moment. From game week 13, can obviously keep a place in our lineups. If you want to go and buy Brennan Johnson at 6.7, I still don't have a problem with that. He is consistent. If you have a way to bench him away at Manchester City, that's fine. But also, City do concede goals, as we spoke about with Rico Lewis. So Johnson is still the best of the cheap midfielders. Then moving up in price, we've got Heung-min Son. The minutes at the weekend were concerning. He's not expected to feature in their European fixture midweek, so should be fine to start Ipswich at home. However, 55 minutes, is he going to be able to get more than maybe 70 in that Ipswich at home game? If that game is won, is he going to play more than that? Now, if the game is won, he may well have been involved in the goals, as he was in the first Spurs goal at the weekend before he got subbed off. I don't think I'd be buying Son this weekend, unless you're maybe wildcarding game week 12, but even then you can roll transfers through the wildcard, and that doesn't feel the most beneficial thing to use one for. He's a fine as a win 1 week punt, but as 9.9 million, I still don't think he's the best long-term pick out of the premium players. Looking at the likes of Palmer, looking at the likes of Saka, Salah, I prefer all of those at the moment over Son, but of course it's the fixture this week that does make him appealing. Then we're moving up front, and it is Dominic Solanke, blank after blank, and then it was 60 minutes of a blank before coming up with a 16-point haul in the final half hour of the game. He's been in the positions, the data has been very mixed. A lot of you are going back to buy Dominic Solanke this week. I'm not sure I feel like that's the best idea. I think I still prefer some of the cheaper forwards over him. And there is a lot of time where Dominic Solanke will frustrate, and you may well get performances like the first 60 minutes or like the previous game weeks in previous weeks. If you want Spurs cover, I think Johnson is a better long-term pick because of being a midfielder and being cheaper. If you own Solanke, of course he's a hold this week, but I still think we're going to get enough up and down performances over the next few weeks that I don't really want to massively recommend investing in them. That Crystal Palace game showed us so much, and now the Villa game, and we're suddenly all back buying them. We need to have a think about, we need consistent players in our teams who can perform every week. Johnson is fine, Solanke is okay, but outside of that, I don't think any of them are really options, and I'm not even sure I'd buy Solanke now. Having a look at another team, and that is Manchester United. 3 great fixtures before some more difficult fixtures after that. There are 3 really reliable assets that you can go and buy, and that is Bruno Fernandes, Onana in goal, and Diogo Dalot. Both should be fitting into both systems that they have, both the system under Ruud van Nistelrooy and then the new system starting after the international break under their new manager, Amarin, as well. Fernandes at 8.2 on penalties is fine. He should be playing in part of the front 3 we expect under the new manager, but we can't be sure. Diogo Dalot should be playing as an attacking wing back in that system as well. And some nice fixtures, but you do have to realise that from game week 14, the fixtures get pretty bad once again. A few other differential punts that you could look at is some of the cheaper defenders like Martinez or Mazraoui, but you have to be relying on them for clean sheets because the attacking threat is not that great, so I would look at Diogo Dalot. And then it's predicting who is likely to start in the new Amarin formation. Garnacho and Rashford are likely to be competing for one spot out on that left-hand side. So right now, I think you can't buy either of them. They're too much of a doubt and too inconsistent as well. You might get some points over the short term, but long term, I think Rashford and Garnacho are non-buys. Fernandes, Onana and Dalot are only the really 3 I would consider going for. Moving on to defenders, having a look at some cheap, mid-priced and expensive defenders. In the cheap defender bracket, Lewis Hall is going to become very popular over the next few weeks with the fixtures they've got coming up. His data and his performances over the past few weeks, locking up the likes of Bukayo Saka, has been very, very impressive. I am looking at him in my team. Anderson at Fulham as well at 4.3. This bracket of 4.0 defenders, there's not much to talk about. Vandenberg has some of the nicer fixtures, but all of Brentford, Leicester, Ipswich, Southampton, where you can get these cheap defenders, are not defending well at all. So I would just about go Vandenberg, but I would try and find the money to go up to someone like a Lewis Hall. If you have a little bit more money, a Kirkes could be a good option. He is in at number 3 in my mid-priced defenders. I also have Aït-Nouri at number 1. Now, I'm slightly less certain of Aït-Nouri at number 1 because he's gone up to 4.7 million. It does feel a little bit expensive for a defense. I don't expect to keep massive amounts of clean sheets. He's also on 4 yellow cards. The attacking data is really strong though, and I do think he's worth a look. Number 2, we've got Kadioglu now at, of course, Brighton. He scored in game week 10. Manchester City in game week 11 is not fantastic, but after the international break in game week 12, a really nice run of fixtures does start for Brighton, and he is on my radar, absolutely. And then we've got Kerkez. I've gone with Kadioglu and Aït-Nouri over Kerkez just because Kerkez has been a big buy because of the points he scored in game week 10. Not massively certain on him as the best long-term pick, but absolutely at 4.4 is not a bad buy at all. Then having a look at the more expensive options, I still think Gabriel is the best buy. Their defensive data, despite not keeping clean sheets, is still really good. They're expecting all of their players back fully fit after the international break. We've then got Gvardiol number 2. The goal threat cannot be ignored, but the lack of clean sheets that they have, the little bit of rotation that he has now that Kyle Walker is back, does put me off a little bit in my team. I can't buy him, and I won't be buying him, and I won't be selling Gabriel to go and buy him, but I can understand why the attacking threat is very appealing. And then number 3, as we spoke about in the Manchester United bracket, we have got Diego Dalot because of the short-term fixtures. The one to add in here that's not in the top 3 is Konate of Liverpool. We do expect him back for the weekend. He is back fit after that shoulder injury. The upcoming fixtures are a little bit mixed for Liverpool though, which is why I'd probably have Diego Dalot as a better short-term option. But Konate is a better long-term pick over Dalot and maybe even over Gvardiol as well. And then having a look at a few forwards. Forwards are the hot topic of the week, particularly the cheap ones. We've got Cunha, we've got Strand Larsen, we've got Welbeck, Wood, Visa, and Raul Jimenez. For me, I'm actually ruling Raul Jimenez out of the talking. The fixture from game week 13 starts to look a lot worse. His performances have not been as good over the past couple of weeks. The subs are getting slightly earlier and earlier, which is what we saw before Muniz got dropped for Jimenez, and there is a slight concern it might go the other way round. Strand Larsen did score at the weekend, but when comparing him to Cunha, I do still think Cunha is worth it. Cunha had other big chances created that Sarabia did miss, and we were very close to a big Cunha haul. Cunha is still the number 1 option to go and buy. Strand Larsen is a very nice cheap option, but from next week, I really like Danny Welbeck. Danny Welbeck does have a little bit of competition along with the likes of Ferguson, João Pedro likely to be back, but the way Welbeck is playing, I cannot see him being dropped. And I do like Visa. Visa's data is fantastic. The next 3 are really, really good as well. Chris Wood continues to tick along, but I still feel like the buy window for Chris Wood has been missed just because of the fixtures over the next few weeks. Newcastle at home and Ipswich at home is good, but Arsenal away and the Manchester City away is not fantastic. So to wrap that up, Jimenez goes in as the worst of the lot. Danny Welbeck is probably second worst, but from next week he'll be bumped up the ranking. Strand Larsen in next as the third worst. Then I'm going to go with Visa. Then I'm going to go with Wood just for consistency. And then we're going to go with Matheus Cunha remaining the best forward to go and buy. And having a look at a few final players for discussion, we're going to start off with a slightly more expensive striker, Jackson and Alexander Isak. Both are ones that people are looking at big time from game week 12, in particular as potential Dominic Solanke replacements, and he goes up against Manchester City in game week 12. Alexander Isak doesn't have the best injury record, but he is back. He is a 90-minute man, and he's on penalties as well. Whereas Jackson doesn't have the injury record, but he doesn't play 90, and he's not on penalties. The Chelsea fixtures do look really nice, and I think at least one of Jackson and Palmer is needed in your team. If you can't go to Palmer, then you absolutely need to be going and having a look at Jackson. At the moment, I would just about put Jackson above Isak, but I think they are both ones to watch. Semenyo is next, a cheap option in midfield at 5.6 million and is starting a really nice run of fixtures. It's worth noting though that he is on 4 yellow cards like Ryan Aït-Nouri, so if he does pick up 1 more yellow, he will miss a game, which is of course a concern if you're looking to buy. But the long-term fixtures are there for you to go and buy, and if he misses a game, it's not the end of the world. He looks really focal to what Bournemouth are doing. 5.6 million is a really nice price, and if you're looking for a midfielder in that bracket, he's probably the number 1 for me at the moment. And finally, I just want to mention Cole Palmer because he is yellow flagged. A few of you are asking about his injury update. We don't have anything. We are expecting to hear from Maresca, the Chelsea manager, on either Wednesday or Thursday before hearing from him again on Friday before the Premier League game. He is yellow flagged. He wasn't pictured in training, along with several other players who are not expected to start on Thursday for Chelsea in the Conference League. So we're not expecting any bad news, really. He is expected to be back for Arsenal at home, but let's wait for official confirmation on that. So that's all from today's video. We'll be back tomorrow with my team selection, looking at what potential transfers I might need to make. I'm looking at some defenders, absolutely. A lot of the defenders I'm looking to buy, I spoke about in this video, so go and check out the earlier section if you didn't watch that. Also, a lot of the data was taken from Fantasy Football Scout. Go and check that out if you haven't already. Any questions you have, drop it all in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here. And I'll be back again very soon.